Okay, this says Bernie most certainly not pandering to crowd at Liberty University.
And that vision is so beautifully and clearly stated in Matthew 7:12. And it states, "So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets." That is the golden rule. Do unto others what you would have them do to you. That is the golden rule, and it is not very complicated.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael. This is my YouTube page. Thank you very much for tuning in. So, yes, Bernie Sanders is so brave. There's no doubt. Not pandering at all to the people, to the religious college where he just read from the Bible at. Do you see him pull a Bible out at every Bernie Sanders rally and read from it? Because that's what he just did at the religious college. At the Christian, the Bible, you know, the people who worship the Bible. That's what he did at their college. Yes, of course he's not pandering. He spoke about abortion. Oh, he's so brave. Oh, he said Black Lives Matter. Oh my God. He's so brave. He said when cops commit crimes, they have to be held accountable. Oh my God, he's so brave. Come on. All he's doing is dog whistle politics. Did he just figure out that Black Lives Matter? Did he just figure out that when cops commit crimes, they should be held accountable? Did he just figure it out? Did he just understand that cops commit crimes? What's the deal here? Because he's been in Congress for like 10 years now, and I haven't seen him do anything to make sure cops are held accountable. Nothing, which is the big problem that we're having with cops, is that there's no accountability. That's why it's impossible to trust police. That's why people are terrified of police, because they know police can go and get away with whatever. They can treat you like shit. They can beat the crap out of you. They can kill your children. And there's zero accountability. Oh, I have to go on leave for 6 months? I'm going to Disneyland. Remember the guy who killed Eric Garner? He was waving at the camera 5 minutes later because he's realizing that he gets paid vacation for the next 6 months. Hey, everybody, I'm going to Disneyland. Yay! That's what he did. That's who these people are. Yes, cops need to be held accountable when they commit crimes. You've done nothing to make sure that happens, Senator Sanders. You know, and this is the part I love with listening to Bernie Sanders speak. Okay, but it's just dog whistle politics. He just says these things and then doesn't do anything about it, right? I voted against the war in Iraq, right? That's what he said. Okay, and then what did you do to stand up against the Pentagon and say no more? What did you do to stand there and say this war is based on lies and I'm going to make sure it's not funded? What, did you do that? I don't see you doing that, Senator Sanders. You were in a perfect position to do it. You guys understand, if Rand Paul's time as senator has proven anything, okay, it is that one senator can stop any vote. One senator. Rand Paul proved it on a Patriot Act vote. You guys remember? And you know what he had to do in order to stop the vote on the Patriot Act? He had to stand there and say, I object. I object. I object. I object. I think he did it like 6 or 7 times. He said, I object. And then, oh, boom. No more provision of the Patriot Act. They just moved on. That's how hard it is to stop. Senator Sanders could have stood up there and said, no more funding for the Iraq War. No more funding for a drone program that's hitting wedding parties. No, it's not going to happen. No funding. He could be the checks and balances that the Congress is supposed to be on the Pentagon, on the White House, and he has chosen not to be by choice because he doesn't want to make waves. He could stand up there and say, I am going to stop the funding for the Iraq War in order to protect my brothers and sisters, our brothers and sisters in uniform, because he loves saying, my brothers and sisters. He loves saying that like a good socialist. All you socialists love it when they say, my brothers and sisters, don't you? I do too. I love it. I've been watching these kung fu movies, right? And they all call each other brother. And I'm like, God, I love that. Why don't we have that spirit here? Why don't we, my brother, this is beautiful. Not if you don't do anything, Senator Sanders. And I haven't seen you do squat. So what, now you're supposed to lead us out of the war? All the next president's going to be is the next war criminal in chief. The next Drone King. They're not going to do anything because they don't. Not because they can't, because they could. We'll get to that later. They could. But they don't. So this is the reason that I did this whole, my cock for president, because my cock is what America is all about. Because it's a mock campaign for president. It gives you a presidential campaign person that you can support, presidential campaign that you can support without having to support the next war criminal in chief. Because we're desperate for someone to support. That's the problem with Bernie Sanders. That's the problem with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton could have been the most transformational political figure in history. Barack Obama, same way. In American history, the most transformational character. They don't do it. Instead of being genuine, instead of just caring about the people, just standing up to protect the people's rights, like they swore an oath to do. Instead of doing that, they war profiteer. They take money from war profiteers, and then they spew the line that the war profiteers want to hear so they can continue their war profiteering. Instead of being the checks and balances on the Pentagon, on the psychopaths in the Pentagon, on the psychopaths in the White House. Instead of being the checks and balances, they do everything to bolster up the credibility of the Pentagon. The Pentagon has zero credibility. They lied us into a war in Iraq, a war of choice, putting our brothers and sisters into harm's way for no other reason than to profiteer from for generations to come. And we all know that now. And Senator Sanders has done absolutely nothing to stop it. And that's why Senator Sanders is not good enough. And it's too bad, because I wish he was. We all wish there was somebody that we could rally around and say, and believe in. But it's impossible. It's not going to happen. Because of the mainstream media won't let us have any real candidates. And because the candidates we have are all just career politicians vying for the most powerful political position they've ever had. And that's it. That's the very best that they are. Thanks very much, you guys. One of these days, this war is going to end. Okay? Stay cool till that day. I love you all. That's why I do this. I know I just another idiot spewing his opinion, but I'm really trying to do what's right. I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to give you a presidential candidate, trying to do something different, trying to put yourself out on a limb, trying to believe that you can make something impossible happen. And the only way anything happens is with you guys' help. So if you want to help, you can do that at MikeHawk2016 or moxnews.com. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
I think it was right about a year ago that I had the privilege of moving my entire family, our entire lives out of the inner city of Birmingham, where we were pastoring as a family, to Liberty University. The first conversation that I ever had about this was about a year ago with our president. And I remember when he called, I've never had a conversation with Jerry Falwell on the phone, and we began to talk, and instantly it felt like I was speaking to a humble man who really loved his children. When he spoke of our student body, he didn't speak of a bunch of people who pay tuition to come into an organization that he leads. He spoke like a father would, his concerns for you, his hopes for you, everything that he had to say about the student body was very much from the posture of someone who wanted better for his own children. And I instantly I remember getting off the phone, just feeling endeared to him. A few more conversations in, we got invited as a family to come here, and I got to meet Becky Falwell and just saw the graciousness of that entire family. And over again, in the last year, I have just watched someone who's been a great champion for Champions for Christ. And I want to say this to you before our president comes to introduce our guest. Nobody loves you more, Liberty students, than our president. No one cares about you, wants the best for you, and wants to see you be world-class leaders more than our president. And that's why he was the first to champion the idea of our convocation becoming a platform for ideas, where people from all walks of life would come and present ideas to us. And honestly, that's nothing new. That's always been the way at Liberty. But I just count it an honor to co-labor with him every day. And I told him the other day, he was here the other day introducing his brother as our special guest speaker, and everybody was saying, "Jerry," and it sounds like you're booing. And I told him, Jerry, they're not booing you. They're actually saying, "Jerry," you know. And so can we just give out a big, fancy Jerry for our very own President Falwell? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. David, they do that chant a lot better than you do. But thank you for that warm introduction, and welcome to Convocation this morning. We're so honored and humbled to welcome a very special guest this morning, and Senator Bernie Sanders is a Democratic president. Is a Democratic candidate for President of the United States. And Senator Sanders, we made room for a lot of your supporters locally here on the front row, so you've got a fan club here. But in 2006, Senator Sanders was elected to the U.S. Senate for the first time after serving for 16 years as the sole congressman from Vermont. And he went on to be reelected in 2012. He was born in Brooklyn, New York. He attended Brooklyn College and the University of Chicago. He later moved to Vermont, where he became a documentary filmmaker and a carpenter. And in 1981, he was elected mayor of Burlington, Vermont, by 10 votes. Under his leadership, he helped transform Burlington into one of the most exciting and livable cities in the nation. Under his administration, the city made major strides in affordable housing, environmental protection, child care, youth programs, and the arts. In Congress, Bernie has fought tirelessly for working families, focusing on the shrinking middle class, and he's been called a practical and successful legislator. He was dubbed the Amendment King in the House of Representatives for passing more amendments than anyone else in Congress. Bernie lives in Burlington, Vermont now, and people have been asking since David came to me and told me that Senator Sanders had agreed to speak at Liberty, and I said, that's great. People have been asking, well, are you going to be able to find any common ground with the senator? And I think I did. I think this morning, Senator Sanders, if you'd come up. I think in the future, he's going to be a fan of the Liberty Flames. We give So we've already found some common ground, I hope. But Senator Sanders, We welcome you to Liberty University. We're humbled and honored that you would come here, and please give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. President Falwell and David, thank you very much for inviting my wife Jane and me to be with you this morning. We appreciate the invitation very much. And let me start off by acknowledging what I think all of you already know, and that is the views that many here at Liberty University have, and I, on a number of important issues are very, very different. I believe in women's rights and the right of a woman to control her own body. I believe in gay rights and gay marriage. Those are my views, and it is no secret. But I came here today because I believe from the bottom of my heart that it is vitally important for those of us who hold different views to be able to engage in a civil discourse. Too often in our country, and I think both sides bear responsibility for us, there is too much shouting at each other. There is too much making fun of each other. Now, in my view, and I say this as somebody whose voice is hoarse because I have given dozens of speeches in the last few months, it is easy to go out and talk to people who agree with you. I was in Greensboro, North Carolina just last night. All right, we had 9,000 people out. Mostly they agreed with me, and tonight we're going to be in Manassas and have thousands out, and they agree with me. That's not hard to do, and that's what politicians by and large do. We go out and we talk to people who agree with us. But it is harder, but not less important, for us to try and communicate with those who do not agree with us on every issue. And it is important to see where, if possible, and I do believe it's possible, we can find common grounds. Now, Liberty University is a religious school, obviously. And all of you are proud of that. You are a school which, as all of us in our own way, tries to understand the meaning of morality. What does it mean to live a moral life? And you try to understand in this very complicated modern world that we live in what the words of the Bible mean in today's society. You are a school which tries to teach its students how to behave with decency and with honesty, and how you can best relate to your fellow human beings, and I applaud you for trying to achieve those goals. Let me take a moment, or a few moments, to tell you what motivates me in the work that I do as a public servant, as a senator from the state of Vermont. And let me tell you that it goes without saying, I am far from being a perfect human being, but I am motivated by a vision which exists in all of the great religions, in Christianity and Judaism, in Islam and Buddhism, and other religions. And that vision is so beautifully and clearly stated in Matthew 7:12. And it states, "So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets." That is the golden rule. Do unto others what you would have them do to you. That is the golden rule, and it is not very complicated. Let me be frank, as I said a moment ago. I understand that the issues of abortion and gay marriage are issues that you feel very strongly about. We disagree on those issues. I get that. But let me respectfully suggest that there are other issues out there that are of enormous consequence to our country and, in fact, to the entire world, that maybe, just maybe, we do not disagree on. And maybe, just maybe, we can try to work together to resolve them. Amos 5:24. But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. Justice, treating others the way we want to be treated, treating all people, no matter their race, their color, their stature in life, with respect and with dignity. Now, here is my point. Some of you may agree with me, and some of you may not. But in my view, it would be hard for anyone in this room today to make the case that the United States of America, our great country, a country which all of us love, it would be hard to make the case that we are a just society or anything resembling a just society today. In the United States of America today, there is massive injustice in terms of income and wealth inequality. Injustice is rampant. We live, and I hope all of you know this, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But most Americans don't know that, because almost all of that wealth and income is going to the top 1%. Now, that's the truth. We are living at a time, and I want all of you, if you would, put this in the context of the Bible, not me, in the context of the Bible. We are living at a time where a handful of people have wealth beyond comprehension. And I'm talking about tens of billions of dollars, enough to support their families for thousands of years, with huge yachts and jet planes and tens of billions. More money than they would ever know what to do with. But at that very same moment, there are millions of people in our country, let alone the rest of the world, who are struggling to feed their families. They are struggling to put a roof over their heads, and some of them are sleeping out on the streets. They are struggling to find money in order to go to a doctor when they are sick. Now, when we talk about morality, and when we talk about justice, we have to, in my view, understand that there is no justice when so few have so much and so many have so little. There is no justice, and I want you to hear this clearly, when the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, the top 1/10 of 1% today in America owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. And in your hearts, you will have to determine the morality of that and the justice of that. In my view, there is no justice when here in Virginia and Vermont and all over this country, millions of people are working long hours for abysmally low wages of $7.25 an hour, of $8 an hour, of $9 an hour, working hard but unable to bring in enough money to adequately feed their kids. And yet at that same time, 58% of all new income generated is going to the top 1%. You have got to think about the morality of that, the justice of that, and whether or not that is what we want to see in our country. In my view, there is no justice when, in recent years, we have seen a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, while at the same time, the United States of America has the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. How can we, I want you to go into your hearts, how can we talk about morality, about justice, when we turn our backs on the children of our country? Now, you have got to think about it. You have to think about it and you have to feel it in your guts. Are you content? Do you think it's moral that 20% of the children in this country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, are living in poverty? Do you think it is acceptable that 40% of African American children are living in poverty? In my view, there is no justice, and morality suffers when in our wealthy country, millions of children go to bed hungry. That is not morality. And that, in my view, is not what America should be about. In my view, there is no justice when the 15 wealthiest people in this country in the last 2 years saw their wealth increased by $170 billion. 2 years. Wealthiest 15 people in this country saw their wealth increase by $170 billion. My friends, that is more wealth acquired in a 2-year period than is owned by the bottom 130 million Americans. And while the very, very rich become much richer, millions of families have no savings at all, nothing in the bank. And they worry every single day that if their car breaks down, they can't get to work. And if they can't get to work, they lose their jobs. And if they lose their jobs, they don't feed their families. In the last 2 years, 15 people saw a $170 billion increase in their wealth. 45 million Americans live in poverty. That, in my view, is not justice. That is a rigged economy designed by the wealthiest people in this country to benefit the wealthiest people in this country at the expense of everybody else. In my view, there is no justice when thousands of Americans die every single year because they don't have any health insurance and don't go to a doctor when they should. I have talked personally to doctors throughout Vermont and physicians all over this country, and without exception, they tell me that there are times when patients walk into their office very, very sick, and they say, "Why didn't you come in here when you were sick?" And the answer is, "I don't have any health insurance, or I have a high deductible. I thought the problem would get better." And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes they die because they lack health insurance. That is not justice. That is not morality. People should not be dying in the United States of America when they are sick. What that is an indication that we are the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. And I think we should change that. And I think that when we talk about morality, what we are talking about is all of God's children, the poor, the wretched. They have a right to go to a doctor when they are sick. You know, there is a lot of talk in this country from politicians about family values. You've all heard that. Well, let me tell you about a family value. In my view, there is no justice when low-income and working-class mothers are forced to separate from their babies 1 or 2 weeks after birth and go back to work because they need the money that their jobs provide. Now, I know everybody here, we all are, maybe in different ways, but all of us believe in family values. Jane and I have 4 kids. We have 7 beautiful grandchildren. We believe in family values. But it is not a family value when all of you know that the most important moments in time of a human being's life is the first weeks and months after that baby is born. That is the moment when mother bonds with the baby, gets to love and know her baby, and dad is there as well. That is what a family is about. And those of you, or at least those of you who are parents, more parents back here than there, I suspect, you know what an unforgettable moment that is, what an important moment that is. And I want you to think whether you believe it is a family value that the United States of America is the only major country on earth that does not provide paid family and medical leave. Now, in English, what that means is that all over the world, when a woman has her baby, she is guaranteed the right, because society understands how important that moment is. She is guaranteed the right to stay home and get income in order to nurture her baby. And that is why I believe, when we talk about family values, that the United States government must provide at least 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave. In my view, there is no justice in our country when youth unemployment exists at tragically high levels. I requested a study last month from a group of economists, and what they told me is that 51% of African American high school graduates between the ages of 17 and 20 are unemployed or underemployed. 51%. We have in this country sufficient amounts of money to put more people in jail than any other country on earth. The United States has more people in jail than China, a communist authoritarian country. But apparently, we do not have enough money to provide jobs and education to our young people. I believe that's wrong. I am not a theologian. I am not an expert on the Bible, nor am I a Catholic. I am just a United States Senator from the small state of Vermont. But I agree with Pope Francis, who will soon be coming to visit us in the United States. I agree with Pope Francis when he says, and I quote, "The current financial crisis originated in a profound human crisis, the denial of the primacy of the human person." And this is what he writes: "We have created new idols. The worship of the ancient golden calf has returned in a new and ruthless guise, in the idolatry of money and the dictatorship of an impersonal economy lacking a truly human purpose." End of quote. And the Pope also writes, quote, "There is a need for financial reform along ethical lines that would produce in its turn an economic reform to benefit everyone. Money has to serve, not to rule. End of quote. Now, those are pretty profound words, which I hope we will all think about. In the Pope's view, and I agree with him, we are living in a nation and in a world, and the Bible speaks to this issue, in a nation and in a world which worships not love of brothers and sisters, not love of the poor and the sick, but worships the acquisition of money and great wealth. I do not believe that is the country we should be living in. Money and wealth should serve the people. The people should not have to serve money and wealth. Throughout human history, there has been endless discussion. It is part of who we are as human beings, people who think and ask questions. Endless discussion and debate about the meaning of justice and about the meaning of morality. And I know that here at Liberty University, those are the kinds of discussions you have every day, and those are the kinds of discussions you should be having, and the kind of discussions we should be having all over America. I would hope, and I conclude with this thought, I would hope very much that as part of that discussion and part of that learning process, some of you will conclude that if we are honest in striving to be a moral and just society, it is imperative that we have the courage to stand with the poor, to stand with working people, and when necessary, take on very powerful and wealthy people whose greed, in my view, is doing this country enormous harm. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So grateful for you, sir. You'll have a seat right down the side. Obviously, just a few minutes here with some questions. These questions, sir, are from our student body. I think you're going to, we opened up to our student government the opportunity for questions to come your way, and a lot of questions poured in. I think these few questions, just in the few minutes that we have with you, will represent the main thoughts on the hearts of our students, the main things that they wanted to know. I think that you're going to find a lot of commonality, obviously, in wanting to see someone go to work and get paid more for it, wanting to see children not be hungry, wanting to see the reality of just racism being erased out of this country. You're going to find a lot of commonality in, obviously, for college students to hear from you that public higher education could be free in this country. So anybody who's 19 is going to be excited about free college. The question isn't so much the commonality in wanting to see those things, but how do we get there? And so in that kind of mindset, just a little bit about how we would get there. As far as race inequality is concerned, this question from one of our students. If you were, sir, were elected president, what would you do to bring healing and resolution to the issue of racism in our country? we both want to see that go away. What steps would you begin to take if you were our leader in seeing that resolved?
That is an excellent question. I thank you for it. I would hope and I believe that every person in this room today understands that it is unacceptable to judge people, to discriminate against people based on the color of their skin.
Yes.
And I would also say that as a nation, the truth is that a nation which in many ways was created, and I'm sorry to have to say this, from way back on racist principles, that's a fact, we have come a long way as a nation. Now I know, my guess is that probably not everybody here is an admirer or a voter for Barack Obama. But the point is that in 2008, this country took a huge step forward, David, in voting for a candidate based on his ideas and not the color of his skin. And whether you like Obama or not, and I do, he is a friend of mine and I work with him on many issues, that is a step forward for America. But let me also say what everybody here knows, and my thoughts having just returned from South Carolina, we all know to what degree racism remains alive in this country. I cannot understand, I really can't, I think about it, I try to understand it, how a sick man can walk into a Bible study class, discuss the Bible, pray with people in the room, and then take out a gun and kill 9 of them because the color of their skins were different than his. And I cannot understand for the life of me how there can be hundreds of groups in this country whose sole reason for existence is to promote hatred. These are hate groups.
Right.
And they say, join us so we can hate African Americans or gays or Jews or immigrants or anybody that is different from us. I can't understand that. But let us be clear that when you have unarmed African Americans shot by police officers, something which has been going on for years, that is also institutional racism and cries out for reform. I am a former mayor who's worked closely with police officers. Vast majority of them are honest, work hard, and do a very good job. But when a police officer breaks the law, as is the case with any other public official, that officer must be held accountable. That's justice. And there is a lot to be done in terms of our criminal justice system, in terms of minimal sentencing, in terms of local police departments which look like armies that are invading a community. But to answer your question, I think what we have got to do is when we see instances of racism, when we hear political leaders appealing to the worst elements of us by making racist attacks against people from another country or people whose color may be different than most of us, we have got to stand up and say, in America, you're not going to do that. Racism is unacceptable.
Yes, sir. We couldn't agree with you more on that thought. We would say, I think I speak for many of our students, that it's not so much a skin issue as much as it is a sin issue, that we can change the behavior. We can change that we could change the behavior of police. We could put cameras on them all day long, but behavior modification can only stop so short as identity change. And so I think we want what you want, but...
Well, let me just say this. The answer is, obviously, we have got to change our hearts.
Yes.
But everybody here should know, 50, 60, 70 years ago in this country,
yes,
we had segregated schools, yes, and segregated restaurants. And it took a Supreme Court, it took Martin Luther King Jr., it took millions of people to man public policy which ended segregation.
That's right. Well, I think where you're going to find commonality is at Liberty University, we're not interested in making sure people of color are invited to sit in the bus or even sit at the restaurant table. We want to see them own the bus and own the restaurant. So we're with you on that. On protecting the vulnerable, I think our students were more passionate about that, sir, than any other thing. The questions that they wanted to know went way beyond just wealth inequality, went way beyond. We certainly had those kind of things. But on protecting the vulnerable, this was probably the #1 type of question that we got here, Senator. Senator Sanders, you've talked in your campaign about how it is immoral to protect the billionaire class at the expense of our most vulnerable in society, obviously children. You just mentioned that even in your talk with us earlier. A majority of Christians would agree with you, but here's the question. A majority of Christians would agree with you, but would also go further and say that children in the womb need our protection even more. How do you reconcile So the question, sir, is obviously you can see this is what they want to ask. Well, this is what's on there. How do you reconcile the two? And again, I know that you have a different view. I know that you, sir, and I don't have to be eye to eye on it, but I sense a real sincerity in you in wanting to see our children protected. Can you see, sir, how we see the child in the womb as the most vulnerable that needs protection?
I do understand.
Yes, sir.
But I do also understand, I understand this is an area where we disagree. I do understand and I do believe that it is improper for the United States government or state government to tell every woman in this country the very painful and difficult choice that she has to make on that issue. And I honestly don't want to be too provocative here, but very often conservatives say, you know, get the government out of my life. I don't want the government telling me what to do. But on this very sensitive issue, of which this nation is divided, right, a lot of people agree with you, a lot of people agree with me. But my view is, I respect absolutely a family that says, no, we are not going to have an abortion. I understand that, I respect that. But I would hope that other people respect the very painful and difficult choice that many women feel they have to make and don't want the government telling them what they have to do. But I want to take that question a step further, David.
Please.
We do disagree on that issue. No ifs and buts about it. I respect your point of view. I hope you'll respect my point of view. But here's where I hope we have common ground. Now, I've not tried to be partisan during my remarks. I have not. But I'm going to be partisan for a moment because I want to lay this on your shoulders. I am the ranking member of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee. That means I lead the Democrats in opposition. Republicans control the House and the Senate. Now, I want to tell you what was in the Republican budget that passed a number of months ago. Check it out. You're thinking I'm not telling you the truth. When you talk about issues of children, understand, Republican budget threw 27 million people off of health care, including many children. At a time when many families cannot afford to send their kids to college, And I am running on a program, by the way, that says every public college and university in America should be tuition free. But at a time when families cannot afford to send their kids to college, Republican budget cut $90 billion in Pell Grants over a 10-year period. At a time when children in America are going hungry, Republican budget cut billions of dollars in nutrition programs, including money for the WIC program, which goes to low-income pregnant women and their babies. And to add insult to injury, in that budget, the Republicans provided over $250 billion over a 10-year period in tax breaks to the top 0.2%. I don't think that is a moral budget.
I don't pretend to be an expert on budgets, but I think a lot of us would be very interested in our government budgeting for Planned Parenthood. I think a lot of us would be very interested in looking at those budgets, and I think they get a lot more complex as well. We're just in for just one more question here, sir, for a last question on religious freedom. A lot of our questions from our students were really, I think, we're just very peppered with concern and brokenheartedness when they see the world around them. And I think this is where I genuinely sense in you, you're a lot like a father figure. You know, when you watch
a grandfather figure. I'm getting older every day.
and I sense that same concern in your heart as we would have. But here's the question in that frame. We're watching on the news a refugee crisis in Syria and religious minorities facing persecution in the Middle East. How do you feel the United States should respond? How do you feel that as the United States that we should be obligated more than we even are now in responding, and that there would be a stewardship of responsibility on the greatest nation in the world to step in even at a greater level in those kind of things?
Well, obviously, David, the answer is yes, but I don't quite know what the word step in means. If the question is, do we have a moral responsibility, not just alone, but to work with Europe, and by the way, to work with some of these very, very wealthy Gulf region countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, to help stem this human tragedy, which all of us are seeing. Can you imagine people leaving their homes in Syria or Iraq with simply the clothes on their back, dragging their kids with them? Do we have a moral responsibility to work with the rest of the world in providing help, bringing some of those people into this country? The answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. But this is where it gets tricky. That's, in a sense, a reasonably easy response. We should do that. Here's where it becomes harder. All of you know that the Middle East and other parts of the world are a real quagmire. We're living in a pretty crazy and dangerous world. We see horror stories every single day of ISIS and people doing barbaric things. We all know that. And this is where it really gets tough. I voted against the war in Iraq. And I voted against that war because I worried very much, and if you read what I wrote at that time, you'll find what I'm telling you is the truth, about the instability and destabilization that would bring about. So the question of U.S. military force, becomes part of this discussion. And let me just say this. I am the former chairman of the United States Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. And I would hope that this is an area all of us can agree on, that we are going to provide all of the health care and benefits that our veterans need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to take care of our own. Absolutely.
But the cost of war, David, is something that is far greater, I fear, than most people know. And before we go off to war, we have got to make certain that we have explored every other possible option. You know, people may not know this, but as the former chairman, I do. In Iraq and Afghanistan, we lost 6,700 brave men and women. Many came home without legs and arms and eyesight. 500,000 of them came home with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury. Their lives have been totally disrupted. Families have been separated. Children have suffered. A great nation like the United States of America, with the most powerful military on earth, in my view, should use every possible opportunity to resolve international conflict without going to war. War should be the last resort.
Absolutely. Senator, it's just been an honor, sir, to have you with us. We on occasion, have the opportunity to have questions and answers with some of our guests. And the one thing that we always end with is the very last question of how can we, and it's not just a statement, I really believe that our students are wanting to know, how can we lean in here? How can we know that you were in North Carolina last night. You're going to be in Manassas this afternoon. You continue to go from place to place, just meeting your staff. They're just incredibly hardworking people in this very fast pace where you and your wife are on the campaign trail with grandkids, and you're the liveliest 73-year-old I've ever met, sir. And how can we pray for you and your family? How can we be thinking of you? What can we, when we think of you and we see you on TV, what can we say? Bernie Sanders asked us to pray for him. He asked us to, what can we?
Well, David, thank you very much for that thought. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. But this is what I would like prayers to be for. Yes, sir. Not just for me. Far more significantly, are prayers for our country, prayers for how we bring our people together, prayers for how we can create in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, a beautiful country, a country where all people have health care, where all kids who have the ability can go to college, where we have wiped out childhood poverty. Those are the prayers that I want to join with you in making.
Amen. That's great. Let's do that. Let's do that now. Let's pray together. Can we do that? Father, we thank you for the fact that, God, you own the cattle on 1,000 hills, that you are the great provider. Father, in this very moment, we come to you as the God of this universe, God, who is able to provide. And we pray, God, that your provisions would flow down for all people, God, all races, all nations. We thank you that, Lord, where morality stops short, spirituality can go further. And so we lean in on you. We thank you where government fails, God, that your kingdom prevails. We pray, Father, for a greater nation. We thank you that we already are blessed by you, God, but we pray for justice and compassion and mercy to be the greatest thing that we're known for as a nation. That our power would be known as a power that is spent, Father, for the least of these. We love you, Lord. Thank you for this opportunity to come together. I pray, Father, for this man. I pray for his family. I pray for his team. Give them sustainable pace, God, as they're on the road. I pray that, Father, in this very moment, that he would know that he has made friends today, that he has come into an environment where people show grace, show appreciation, and show humility, Father, and that also gratitude is in our hearts, that he would take the time out of his schedule to come. So just bless him in this season. All of God's people said amen. Can we thank our senator just for being with us today? Great job. Thank you, sir.
And Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders there, running on the Democratic ticket, trying to get the Democratic nomination for president in 2016. We're going to take your phone calls. You can let us know what you think about what you just heard from the candidate. The number's up on your screen. For Democrats, 202-748-8920. For Republicans, 202-748-8921. And for independents and all others, 202-748-8922. Send us a tweet or join us on our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/cspan. And let us know what you think. We've already got a number of callers. So after that, the speech, which was about 27 minutes, and the Q&A, we're going to get right to your phone calls. Gary's on the line from Everett, Washington, on the Independence line. Hi, Gary.
Hi. Well, this is what is great about Bernie, is that he can go into a place like a very fundamental spiritual area and actually connect. And that's what makes him as popular right now today, is because he can connect with so many people. He's telling truth. He's not a politician. He's intelligent. He sees the world as it is and isn't afraid to say it, warts and all. I think the reception he got there was incredible, because he's not a fundamentalist spiritual guy, and yet he spoke the truth, and fundamentalists love the truth. So this is why he's heading up in the polls as far as I can see.
Yeah, Gary, on that note, let's take a look at a couple of tweets here. One from Manu Raju, who's tweeting, Bernie most certainly not pandering to the crowd at Liberty University, gives a vigorous defense of abortion rights, and most of crowd is quiet. Can you imagine Hillary Clinton doing what Bernie Sanders is doing right now at Liberty University? I can't. That's from Stephen Dennis. And then The Hill talking about some poll numbers of Hillary Clinton suffering, as The Hill puts it, dramatic tumble in new national poll. And things have been terrible for Hillary lately. They could get worse before they get better. That's from Roll Call. Also, one more on the campaign trail. Mark Cuban, Trump opens the door for wealthy outsiders. But we're talking about Bernie Sanders, independent senator from Vermont, taking your phone calls. And Keith is going to weigh in, calling from Palm Bay, Florida, on the Republicans line.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
It just amazes me sometimes how educated people can fall for this stuff. The first two callers said he wasn't lying. You cannot get education for free. Somebody's got to pay for it. The only place you get education for free is in communist countries, where everybody does the exact same thing. You're little minions and you work for the government. And I respect Bernie, because he comes out and says he's a socialist, but not a communist all the way. He only want to halfway go there. Instead of bringing people down, like he said about billionaires, you got to bring them down. Mm-hmm. We need to raise people up. And I don't think all this free stuff that they claim that they can give, which has got to come somewhere, is the way to do it, because that's just a lie. It doesn't work. It's never worked in history where things like that. The capitalist system is way outdid the world in progress and everything else than a socialist or a communist country.
And Keith, just out of curiosity, really who are you interested in terms of the presidential race?
I really don't see anybody yet.
Okay.
Nobody tells the truth. None of them tell the truth.
All right. Thanks for the call, Keith. Frank's on the line, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, independent.
Hi, yes, Frank. This is Frank.
Yep.
Hi, I'd like to give my input to this, too. One of the things that I was interested in is there was recently a news item about the Russians moving troops into Syria, and Syria's, in a real bad shape nowadays. I was in the Air Force years ago when I was stationed in Turkey. I'd like to find out, Bernie Sanders didn't address it yet, and it's still fairly new, but how, if he would be in favor of maybe building up more troops in NATO, particularly Turkey in this case, because of what's going on in Syria and some of the other areas of the Mideast. So this might be something we might consider. The policy of containment years ago, which was developed by George Kennan, and was geared towards the Soviet Union. Kennan himself was a Russian expert, but that maybe we might be seeing some of these issues replaying themselves nowadays. And I'd like to see how Bernie Sanders, or for that matter any other candidate, would address that. I thought George W. Bush made a mistake by going into Iraq. I was against that. Maybe somewhat of a toned-down policy that's muscular in content, but not aggressive and belligerent in its overall effect.
Well, you know, we have a number of appearances both from Bernie Sanders as well as all the other candidates, Republican, Democrat. You can find them at cspan.org if you want to go back, look, see what they've already said on the campaign trail. It's part of our Road to the White House coverage. But then take a look at a tweet, too. It talks about Bernie Sanders' speech at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. Bernie concluded a 27-minute speech, it says, to Liberty. It was mostly focused on economic issues, received politely by most and enthusiastically by some. And then from Daniel Newhouser, Bernie making the moral and theological argument for social and economic progressivism to cheers at Liberty University. Interesting dynamic. And then Niels Lesniewski tweeting, Bernie Sanders' reference to the Pope sure does not get raucous applause at Liberty. And then one more from Manu Raju, who says, loudest cheer of the day when moderator of Bernie discussion says that children in the womb deserve equal protection. So that was the dynamic there at Liberty University. Getting your take on it, Ronnie's next on the Democrats line from Morrisville, Pennsylvania.
Yes, I'm very interested in the last caller that spoke about education being free. And I have children that are in their 30s that have gone to college and have good careers right now. But I want to say that, and I tell them that in less than a generation, in a decade of 10 years, it has become impossible, the cost of higher education today. When I went to college, I went to Temple University in downtown Philadelphia. It became state-related. It went from $1,000 a year to $450 a year.
Now, Ronnie, did you hear anything from Bernie Sanders that would affect your thoughts?
Well, that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
This other person was saying he is offering free education. And with the progress of this country and how much money there is, we want an educated electorate. And as long as the rich keep the electorate uneducated and they don't know what's going on, then they are going to rule and make more money than it is unbelievable right now.
You interested in Bernie Sanders for president? Hillary Clinton? Who's got your vote if it were today?
Well, Bernie Sanders talks to the universal issues. Mm-hmm. Hillary Clinton talks about women's rights. Women's rights are human rights, as she always tells us about. But this is a case more than women's rights. It's human rights.
All right, Ronnie, I want to leave it there, get a couple more calls in. Freddie's on the line, Metairie, Louisiana, independent.
Yeah, this is Freddie in Metairie, Louisiana.
Hi, Freddie.
Great to have you on. Thanks for having me. I've been a long-time listener, first-time caller. So I became an independent because of Bernie Sanders and hearing Bernie Sanders on C-SPAN years ago. Hearing his filibuster, hearing him speak on issues. When I heard him, he was cutting right through. There was no left, no right, cut right through to the middle. It was the first voice I can remember that just spoke to me as an American. And so to see him today walk into the lion's den, so to speak, into the house of opposition, into that audience, and to be able to engage them and participate with them, and I think change some hearts and minds today, whether they reacted or not, with their friends and family around. That is what America is all about.
Are you surprised at how well he's done so far?
No, not a bit. Not one bit. And this is what Americans used to understand. It's not about what you're going to see on the TV screen talking about Hillary or Jeb or Trump or whatever. This is a revolution. This is people like me and you standing up and saying, yes, it's over the way it's been. And this is the first voice we've had, the first real voice. And he went right into the lion's den. And look at the man.
All right, Freddie, thanks. Let's take a look here. Bernie Sanders, this is from the Huffington Post. Bernie Sanders is surging. What happens next is the question. Leading Clinton in New Hampshire and increasingly in Iowa, Sanders now has to focus on challenging her nationally. When he entered the race back in May, political observers largely wrote off Senator Bernie Sanders as a fringe candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination. Few thought he would present a serious challenge to frontrunner Hillary Clinton, but he now has surged ahead of her in New Hampshire by an average of more than 10 points. In recent weeks, several polls in Iowa also show him leading Clinton in the Hawkeye state. A graph there shows that what's been happening. And while early caucus and primary polls not a reliable indicator of the state race, it's safe to say his platform of fighting economic inequality is resonating among more and more Democrats, and the party's enthusiasm for Clinton is waning, giving Sanders ample opportunity to paint himself as a foil. You can read more at HuffingtonPost.com. Take a couple more questions here. Anita's on the line, Democrat in Madison, Wisconsin.
Hi. I have a question that doesn't really relate to the speech today. However, if today were a voting day, I would vote for Bernie Sanders, no question. But I have a curious question about what the immigration issues in Europe and the Middle East are very, very important. And we know they're already having trouble trying to figure out whether there should or shouldn't, there should be barriers or there shouldn't be barriers. I'm also wondering about the people who come here from Central Latin America and from Mexico. Why are they not called immigrants? Why must they be called aliens, illegals, anything we can think of? And I think about the children who came.
All right. Thanks, Anita, for the call. If you want to take a look back also at some of the comments that Senator Sanders made about immigration and about race relations in the U.S., just go to cspan.org and check out our video library. You can find his speech there in its entirety. Let's take one more call here. Republican line, Charles, Denver, North Carolina.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I think when it comes down to a choice between Bernie Sanders and Hillary, Bernie is by far better than the alternative there. But I have a couple of issues. The first one being abortion. I saw that he advocated for the women's rights, but when will somebody on the Democratic side advocate for the unborn child's rights? That's, to me, a big, big issue. And while in my heart, I look at the things that he wants to get done, and I say that would be great if we could do it. I don't know how we could pay for it. And I think most Republicans look at these type of things and say, when do we have to pay? Why do we have to pay for everything? And it's pretty soon nobody's going to have to pay for anything. The government's going to pay for it all. It's wonderful to be able to do those things, but you got to be able to pay for it.
All right, Charles, thanks for the call, and thanks for all your calls. If you didn't get through, again, just remember we'll have the phones open on Washington Journal every morning, 7 a.m. Eastern. And if you missed any of Bernie Sanders' remarks at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, you can find them online. But we'll also be playing them tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's our prime time here on C-SPAN. We'll take a look back, see what he had to say if you missed any of his remarks. And then Carly Fiorina, she spoke also during the Stretch Kennedy GOP picnic a couple days ago, so you can watch her remarks also. We'll have that at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And next, we'll take a look at some of the losses that the Democrats sustained in 2014 and what they can do about it. This was sponsored by Netroots Nation.
All right, so that was a very fast 2 minutes. We're ready to go. Thank you all for being here for this panel of New 50-State Strategy, how we can reverse the decline of Democrats and progressives in the states. I'm really excited to see everyone here, really excited to see a full room, because I think this is one of the most important topics we can be talking about. And I think it's equally important that we're talking about it in a place where it needs to be discussed, right? A place like Arizona.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.